Hi, this is Stuart Nachbar from Educated Quest. As college advisors who help people find colleges, we're not always the best people to assess whether someone is actually ready to go to college. However, there are people out there who are, and I'm lucky to be talking to one today, Dr. Teri Solochek. She is a psychologist and educational consultant, partner in Solochek Cantor and Associates, based in the Los Angeles, California area. Teri, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So, Teri, what are some signs that a high school student, or maybe a recent high school graduate who's been in the workforce for a little while, is not ready to move on to college?
I think that's a really good question, and I think it's something that as college counselors, it's real important to look at. There's certain things that I think kids need. They need to be able to self-advocate and ask for what they want. In my office, we talk a lot about grit and resilience because life throws things at you. And you don't have control over what life is going to throw. And that can be anything from a professor you don't like to a roommate you don't get along with. And you need to be able to manage how you respond to it. So I think a lot of the life skills are really, really important for college. I think the independent living skills, I like to look at a senior year or time before a student goes off to college as a dress rehearsal. Can they get up and get to where they need to be on time? Are they sleeping or are they sitting on their phones all night? Are they able to be independent? Can they make a bed? Can they do their laundry? So often kids are propped up at home. And I think it's real important to be able to look at not just the academic part of kids, but that life skills piece.
What's been your experience when some of these people decide, you know what, I don't think I want to go to school for a little while. I think I might want to try to work.
We see all kinds of things. We see some kids that will do kind of post-high school internships. We'll see kids do gap years. We'll see kids kind of maybe get a job. Sometimes they know what they want to do. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they may experiment a little bit with community college. And then we see kids do post-grad years. Some people call them 13th years. I call them, and most schools call them post-grad, and they're usually in a boarding school, which gives kids a chance. And people do it for lots of reasons. We'll see athletes do it. We'll see really bright kids do it that want to expand their high school transcript before they apply to college. We'll see kids do it that may have some learning challenges and they need that practice of being away from home. They need to be able to kind of learn to self-advocate. And we'll see some kids that just work. And what they end up doing is kind of figuring out, okay, do I want to go to college? Do I need college? Or what is it that I want to do? And I think for some kids, it's a matter of maturation, of learning kind of, when it comes to college, what am I going for? And what do I want to get out of it? And really doing it for themselves versus doing it for mom and dad who say, I'm only going to support you if you're in college.
Does that 13th year sometimes become a 14th year or indefinite?
If it's in like a post-grad year, no, because they'll only take you for
Right.
1 year.
But I mean, like employment or a gap year or something like that.
Sometimes kids find a passion, and maybe it's something that you don't need college for, or maybe it's something that you really learn, and then it's, whoa, if I want to get to the next level, I need to go to college. So I think what it does is it makes college a little bit more meaningful and more tangible. I don't hear many kids say, and I mean this with all due respect, that I want to go to college because I can't wait to take the classes and I want a great education. They're going to college because they get to be out on their own and they're in a dorm or a fraternity house or whatever. So if we're able to kind of get them to look at what that real piece of college is and to give meaning to it, I think it helps with that grit and resilience because they know there's a means to an end. They know why they're doing what they're doing, not just going to college because they should be doing it.
How do you work one-to-one with the student or young adult And then how do you work with the their parents, and then what happens when there are differences?
Okay, well, I don't do college counseling. Okay, number one, we do, kind of educational consulting and therapeutic consulting. And people will come to us for various reasons. If a kid is stuck and we're trying to figure out, what kinds of things are going on. So we really kind of begin to look at what is underlying it. I think when it comes to college, sometimes it's trying to get parents' wants and dreams and all those things they feel for their kid the day they bring them home from the hospital when they're born. Oh, my kid's going to grow up and they're going to go here or they're going to go there. So I think sometimes it's providing something that's a little bit more realistic. I think for kids, it's really being heard and taking shame away. That it's okay if you don't go to college, or it's okay that you don't go to college now. I think Malia Obama taking the gap year was huge for the world because it let kids see that, hey, you don't have to go right on to college. There are other things that you can do if either you don't want to or if you are not ready.
How much of your investigation working, is listening versus doing other things?
Is or 90% is listening. I mean, obviously there's some talking, but it's listening, and it's what we call researching. It's really getting information together. And I think that's real important. So anyone that we're working with and we see a lot of young adults. We see a lot of young adults that have bounced out of college. And it's not usually substance use. People think, oh yeah, they're just smoking too much pot. And it's not. We see a lot of kids, the school may not have been a good fit. Kids where there's a lot of social anxiety, so they don't leave their dorm room. We see kids with the gaming. We see kids that, some of them obviously do party, or kids that don't have those independent skills. And they end up with roommate issues because they don't keep their room clean. And then they're not getting up and going to class, and everything just kind of snowballs. So I think there's lots of things that you kind of want to look at. But, and for some kids, again, it's the shame. And, they're ashamed that they couldn't do it, or they're ashamed if someone says, oh, well, you can't go to college, because they own it. And it's kind of, well, then you think I'm stupid. And it has nothing to do with that. There's maturity, there's life skills, there's so many things that are involved.
So it's often, if the person decided to go to college in the beginning, it's often a combination of factors versus one factor.
Right. And I think asking the right questions are important. We'll see kids that have not made it in college, and when we're getting the history, one of the first things I'm thinking, I would never say it, is, why did this kid go 3,000 miles away to school? Whether in high school there were history of depression, or, other kinds, whether there were mental health issues, sometimes substance use issues, and the kid wasn't ready to make that step. They weren't ready to have the stress of being on their own and academics and all of that. And really, and again, my hat goes off to all the college counselors. It's really finding that fit, finding what is going to be comfortable and appropriate for any given student, and what they want, not what mom and dad wants, because their mom and dad aren't going. And I know what I had even with my 23-year-old, he was now 23 when he went off to school. College isn't what it was when I went. So you can't even begin to compare what a parent's experience of college was with what the kids are doing right now.
What about when students have a learning difficulty, like if they're ADD or if they're on the spectrum? How are the options more limited, or are they different?
I think a little bit of both, and it depends on what the issue is. And again, I defer to college counselors for that, because there's support programs in so many schools. What I think needs to happen is determining what is the level of support someone needs. If they're on the spectrum, for example, do they need a specialized dorm where there's more support and you've got some built-in socialization? How much academic support does someone need? And their ability to self-advocate and seek it out. What we find so often, our kids have qualified for everything under the sun, but they've got to go to the Learning Center and get it. They've got to go reach out. They need to talk to their professors, and they don't do it. In high school, so much of that is built in and done for them, but they need those self-advocacy skills, and to develop those for them to be successful and to use the accommodations that they have, and then obviously making sure that they're in a school that has the appropriate accommodations, because it's more than just untimed tests. It's a lot more complicated.
One of the things that I've heard, I have a sister-in-law who is a special ed teacher, and one of the things I've heard is that when it comes to for going from high school to college, only about a third of the students who could receive accommodations from their college actually accept them. Is that true?
I haven't seen that. First of all, you have to look at what are the accommodations you need. And then it's looking at the schools that do that. And I've had kids in college, and this is more from coming from the kids I've tested. We've had, obviously extended time is easy. Testing in a separate room is easy. Again, things have changed because now you can kind of use a computer for everything. They don't write in blue books like we used to do. We have kids that have note takers. I've had kids where there's readers for exams. You can get the oral books. There's so much now, that you can get, but kids have to use them. And what I find are kids don't use them. And you need to talk with them about, number one, about their testing, so that they then understand how they learn, so they then can ask for what they need. Because you don't only have a learning disorder in school, you have it all the time. Years ago, in my first job doing this kind of thing, we had a speech pathologist in our office who was severely dyslexic. And in those days, what we had to do at the end of the month is put in like all of our billing, and it was all numerical. And she kept reversing the numbers on the codes. So she said, look, I'm dyslexic. Can I verbally provide or dictate my billing because I can't write it? And they said, no problem. So again, you have to be able to advocate for yourself.
And how do parents often take the advice when you've told them about a situation?
It depends. It depends. We've had parents say, we don't want our kids to know they're testing. It's like, well, you have to have your kid. I don't necessarily think every kid needs to know their IQ, but they need to know their strengths and weaknesses. And it's usually not a surprise. These kids know. Sometimes there's a real sense of relief because you're kind of talking about it. And so many of these kids, they've been tested from the time they're tiny. The ones I think that struggle the most are the ones where they've just been propped up. And here they are, a junior in high school, and they're getting tested for the first time. And now all of a sudden there's issues. That makes it a lot harder when it comes to whether it's accommodations on SATs or ACTs and accommodations in college, because there's been no documented history. So that sometimes is a little more difficult.
Do you find that that these students, these young people, that they vary academically, they vary in their enthusiasm for school?
Absolutely. We see kids that are, that have some learning issues, and they're motivated, and they have really good grades, and they're taking advanced classes and AP classes, and they're using their supports. And then we see the ones that just kind of have given up. And it's the ones that have given up that I always have concerns about when you talk college, because you've got to improve that self-confidence and that academic self-confidence, or they're just going to shrivel up. And, I want kids to have success experiences. They need to, again, be able to withstand the challenges, but you also have to build them up.
Well, you said success experiences a moment ago. Do you think opportunities like a gap year offer that?
Yeah, I mean, I think gap years are great. But I look at them for what is it that you're looking to accomplish in that period of time. Sometimes it's just time to go before you go away. But for others, it's skill building. So we've had kids do like NOLS, the Northern Outdoor Leadership School, which they have programs all around the world. And it's kind of leadership and self-esteem building. You can get college credit for it. So for some kids that need to develop some of that confidence and grit, those can be wonderful. We see kids go on, service trips. We've seen kids that kind of do an independent, kind of quasi-supervised apartment living and doing internships. I mean, there's lots of different kinds of things that are out there. And then there's things that have therapeutic components for kids that need, a different type of support.
How has the pandemic changed the numbers of opportunities that these people will have?
Oh, that's the $1,000,000 question. A lot of things closed. Anything that was life skill oriented and therapeutic, all that stuff has stayed open. We've got kids and young adults that have been in therapeutic programs that you never would have even known that there was a pandemic, because you're kind of in a little cocoon. What none of us know is, what is life going to look like in the fall? What's going to be in person, what isn't going to be in person. I don't know. I don't know. And I have families asking me that all the time with regard, not for college, but for school and boarding school. Well, what's open? I said, you know what I know. And we don't know, because they say they're going to open and then they're not going to open. I feel for these kids, because it's, again, not the experience that they thought that it was going to be.
Well, the other thing is, it seems like week to week, more colleges are going into the remote column, where their education is going to begin online.
Right.
And does that offer a certain comfort level or more uncertainty? If you said, you know what, I'll be home, and parents can watch their child, make sure their child's studying.
Right, but that's not what kids want. I look at, you're going off to college, you're not going off to do that. And then there's a lot of kids that don't work well online. They need that face-to-face and all of that interaction. Then I think about it, this is the parent part of me talking, and that is, if my kid was going to go to some school on the East Coast, for example, and it's going to cost me $50,000 or to $70,000 a year for him to be there, and it's all going to be online, and he's going to live at home. Do I want to pay that kind of money for my kid to sit at home and not have that whole experience? And it's the same kind of thing we're seeing here, even with like private schools and things like that are, high schools that are all online now. Is, do you want to pay $40,000 a year for it to be online, and then you bring in tutors and all that other kind of stuff? Or do you use it, the college level community college, or at the high school level public school, do you use that curriculum and then spend your money on, tutors, or for college, do you then take a year off? I mean, there's so many different things to think about. One of the things that I think about, even with college, I'm in LA. If I have a kid going to Rutgers, for example, and everything's online, well, if he has a class that's 8 o'clock in the morning, that's 5 o'clock in the morning here. So is that kid going to get up to be online for school? So I don't know.
I would guess, though, in California, more of the kids who are getting ready to go to college tend to stay in California.
Some, but there's a lot of draw for some of the others for out-of-state schools. And for so many of these kids, for them, the draw of college is getting out of mom and dad's house. The last thing they want is mom and dad saying, are you online? Are you doing your college work? That's the last thing they're going to want.
And do the parents seem like more interested in that? Like they want to wake up their kid, they want to get them ready for school?
I think they don't want to. I think they do it because they're all home too. We're still pretty locked down. Everybody's at home. And I think maybe they think that they should be doing it. I think it's important to see what kids do on their own. Okay, if they're not going to do it on their own, then they're not ready to be there. It's like, and I don't know how you work, like even as a college counselor, is how much are the kids doing of filling out their applications? If mom and dad need to fill out the application and they've got to read every essay and they're intruding on what you do, then you look at how ready is that kid to go away, or how ready are the parents to have the kid go away.
I'm hands off on that. I give direction on essays, but I don't fill out the forms because
No, I would hope you wouldn't.
that's the student's job to do. And colleges, from my experience, want to empower the student. They would rather the student ask questions. What am I going to learn? How am I going to live? How am I going to make friends? How do I get football tickets? How do I do? They want to. I think the colleges, they would rather the parents were quiet. When I go on campus tours, they'd rather the parents were quiet and the kids were asking the questions.
Absolutely, but the parents aren't always quiet.
No, they're not.
I mean, when we went to the freshman orientation for my son, I thought the greatest thing was they separated all the kids and parents. Kids went in one thing, parents went somewhere else, so that kids could have a voice. I mean, even in my office, I will meet with kids separately because the parents don't let them talk. Or they will say what they think the parents want to hear. And you separate a kid from their parents and you can hear a very different story.
Practically every group tour that I've been on, where there are parents and high school students together, the parents were first in asking questions. Then there was me, and then there was the kids. So I totally relate to that. Last question. Are students who opt for a 13th year, whatever that is, more ready for college after they finish, and more likely to earn a degree in a reasonable amount of time?
I think they are more ready if they've used the time productively, and now they see the value of doing it. I think they're much more ready, especially if you have a kid that's been away, like a kid that does a PG year in a boarding school. They already know the independence. They've already lived away from mom and dad. They check in with parents like once a week. Even with the cell phone, you don't have to check in with your kid every single day. They need that level of independence. So I think sometimes if they're doing something that's away from home, they're developing more when it comes to life skills. So there's less of a learning curve.
Teri, thank you for...
Laundry. Okay. Sorry about that. I was going to say one other thing. I was saying laundry is a big thing. Kids need to do their laundry, and there's no harm in having a kid do their laundry in high school, or at least make sure they know how to do it.
Do you ever find that they had too much soap or too much water?
Probably, or not enough. We had a kid who dropped out the middle of the first semester of her freshman year because she just couldn't manage. And when the parents went to pick her up, they walk in the room. She had a single, and they go, "Oh, it stinks." What happened? She did her laundry, but she didn't know how to use the dryer. So she just stuck all the wet clothes under the bed because she didn't want to ask somebody, how do you use the dryer? So that's what I talk about when we look at life skills, and we can laugh, but this stuff happens. When my son was in school, he used to come home with all these stories, because I can tell what kind of parents these kids had because they don't know how to do anything. He said, it was just interesting. He said, someone even came up to me and said, what do you put on this to get a spot out of a shirt? He said, but you showed me, so I showed him what he needed to do. So I just think all that stuff's important.
Teri, thank you for spending this time with me today.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed this.
Me too. Thanks a million, and good luck with the rest of the virus.
Thank you.